What is up and welcome back to Talk Nutrition. Today we are joined by my friend Ronja. What's up, Ronja? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for coming on the podcast and being willing to talk about your story, right? So I want to bring on Ronja to talk about MS and what life is like with MS. And I think she's someone who deals with it very well. And like you just told me, like before we hit record, like you almost don't see it as a problem, right? It's something where, well, I just got to live with it and make it work anyway. But I think it's cool to explore because not only will this resonate with people with MS, it's probably also going to resonate with people without MS who may still be struggling with things and almost see this as motivation to really show up for their goals, right? And be inspired by it. So that's why I want to bring you on and kind of share your story. So before we dive in, would you mind doing a brief introduction? Like, who are you? What do you do?
I'm Ronja. I'm originally from Sweden, but I moved to Oslo in 2012. I just started my own business as a personal trainer. I switched career. I have a bachelor degree in human resources and management, but I just kind of wanted to follow my dreams. So that's what I do now.
Yeah, I love that. Do you think it's the MS journey that got you to this point where you're like, hey, I want to help people now?
Definitely had an impact. It did. I've been aware like about what I'm eating and stuff like that, and I've been into I'm a pole dance instructor as well, so I had that like with me, and I just felt like the whole coaching thing would be really interesting, so I just went for that. And when I got my MS, I felt like, okay, how can I deal with this? How can I handle this situation like the best way possible? So I started to do a lot of research and I dig into like what exercises was good and like dieting and food and all this.
So when you did that, right? So I think this is interesting. Like, so when you went online and tried to research what I can do about MS or how can I live with MS or whatever, was it like, did you find a lot of good information early on, or was it similar to where when people look for nutrition information, you almost felt like more confused?
So in the beginning, it was a lot. It was overwhelming because it was so negative, right?
Yeah.
It was just, you're gonna end up in a wheelchair. You can't eat this, you can't eat that, you can't do this, right? But my doctor, he was like, you just have to continue as normal because I trained a lot when I got the diagnosis. But still, like when you're on your own and you're like, okay, what is this disease that I have now? Like, how am I supposed to do this? I'm not used to being sick, right? And now I'm going to be sick for the rest of my life just by waking up one day, kind of. It felt like that. So it was absolutely overwhelming and a lot of negativity. So I was like, okay, I can't just look at one thing. I have to like make sure that I have every aspect of this and understand the disease.
Yeah, I think it should start there, right? Like just fully understanding it. And going back to what you were saying, where it was like very negative and you can't do this and that. Before I met you, like I never looked into MS, right? I didn't know what it was per se. I've heard about it, but like I actually thought before that it was one of those conditions where like to use the word doomed, like you're kind of doomed in a way, where
Hmm.
it's just gonna get worse and there's almost nothing you can do about it. But what I've seen from you and the things that you share, like there's actually a lot you can still do and stay in great shape and be healthy and practice, the basics we all kind of got to do anyway, like nutrition and the mindset stuff. But what was it like for you, like when you got like diagnosed? Like, what was like the initial response?
Um, well, it was like when I got the diagnosis, like on the day, it was like my heart just broke, like in a thousand pieces. I remember I was at the hospital and I stood in the parking lot and I just cried my eyes out. There was like no tomorrow. It was like somebody died. I just cried. I cried and I was like, okay, I'm grieving myself because the healthy me died, right? And now from this day forward, I'm always going to be sick. So that day, I really like took the time and be like, okay, how can I handle this situation? What am I supposed to do? I don't really know anything about like MS as well. I knew that it was like a chronic disease, but that's kind of what I knew about it. Um, But again, I got like great support from the people around me, and I just kind of woke up the next day and been like, I'm gonna share my story, and the people who seen it will see it, and the people who wants to listen will listen. And I'm not for everybody, and not everybody's for me, but the right people will find me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think it's really cool. You just mentioned this before we hit record. Like, it's cool to see that people with MS or who have relatives who have MS are like reaching out to you and they're like, thank you for sharing this stuff, right? Because,
Yeah.
like you said, like not a lot of people kind of know where to go with these things or know other people with it. And then it can be really cool to actually meet someone, even if it's online, right? But meet or follow someone, whatever it is, and see how they're dealing with it and kind of have that support, right? Because you're in the same boat. Let me go back a little bit because I was curious because obviously you went to the hospital to, right, get the diagnosis. Like leading up to that, were you struggling with certain like symptoms? Like what was the main thing where you're like, hey, like something's wrong here? Like,
Yeah. I lost sensation in my from my toes all the way up to my chest. So it got to a point, it started in my toes, and it felt like, the feeling you get when your legs are falling asleep? It was like that, and it just moved day by day up and up and up. And when I came to the point where I couldn't feel the paper when I went to the bathroom, I was like, okay, I need to get this checked. So that's what I did. So that's kind of how it happened.
yeah, yeah. I mean, shit. Like, good thing you also went, right? I mean, I think by then, like most people will go to doctor. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, we're not feeling stuff, um, but we
I
know as well,
didn't
like a lot.
really, I didn't really go when I should have gone
Yeah,
because
okay, fair
then
enough.
I'm
Yeah,
usually like, oh, it'll be fine. Don't
yep.
worry. It's gonna pass. So it took me a couple of days, and then when I was like, oh shit, I need to like figure this out, I just I went because I was like in the middle of my school system, and I had like an exam, and I was like, well, I have to go and I have to write that exam. Obviously, I didn't, but that's what I was in my head. And I was like, I
Yeah,
have to go, I have to write that exam, and then I can call the doctors. So that's what I did. So I went and I wrote the exam, and then on my way back, I was like, hey, funny story, I can't feel my legs. And they're like, oh, you need to get into the doctors right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine.
yeah,
So I went home and I had some lunch. I took my time. I packed my bag because later that night I was supposed to teach 4 dance classes. So I packed my bag and I was like, moving around, and life was kind of fine. I just couldn't feel my legs. And I walked into the doctor's and I was like, "Hey." And he's like, "Wait, you can't feel your legs and you're walking?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's a funny story, right?" And that's how I like ended up going to the hospital.
yeah. I think that's a great lesson. I think I'm definitely like that. Like in the past too, I had times where I couldn't get out of bed from the pain in my back.
Hmm.
Um, I had times when I first got into running when I messed up my knee where like it hurt like hell. Like it was like a knife in my knee, right? I never got it checked. So it's like one of those where I can relate to it. But I I like this. So obviously in this case we're talking about MS, right? Which
Hmm.
is way more serious. But I think in general we need to be better with this as people because oftentimes we'll be struggling with certain things or we can kind of tell, and this could be weight related, it could be anything, right? But we kind of know there's something going on, right? We have something that we should probably address. And
Mm.
this could even be mindset related. This could be certain behaviors, lifestyle, whatever, right? And I think because of the things that you mentioned too, right? You got to go to school. You got to do your exam. I got work. I got my kids to take care of. I got to do all this stuff. I'm already so busy.
Mm.
I think we tend to push that away and we put that off because we're so busy. But if we don't address it and we just stay with that, I'm too busy to take care of this and that, it will get worse in many
Oh
cases,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's a good analogy in a way because I think a lot of times we tend to think, I'll be okay. I'm very
Yeah.
much like that, right? I'll be okay. But getting help, getting things checked, and actually looking into the problem that we may be dealing with, or the symptoms we're noticing or whatever, like we want to do it before it's already too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Um, Sticking with the mindset topic for a second, like I think therapy still these days, like a lot of people would think that that's something for when it's already too late almost.
Hmm.
But no, like we can, for example, use therapy to prevent things from getting worse so that we don't have to continue with that down the road, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, so yeah, so you definitely notice, okay, something's up. You eventually got it checked.
Mm,
First, it was like, oh shit, you know. But
mm.
then pretty soon, like actually the next day, you were like, I'm just gonna share my story. I'm gonna work for it, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that I can really tell from your content and the things you post about. Is like you're showing up, you know.
Yeah.
You're showing up more than people without MS. You know what I mean?
I want to
But what
break
do
the
you?
stereotype.
Yeah, that's and I love that. I think I'm all for that. So no, but what are some like misconceptions you see online and just in general, maybe based on the things that you've learned yourself about MS? Because obviously we just talked about it. A lot of people tend to think, okay, now I'm doomed or whatever, or that's what you thought in the beginning. Um, how does this relate to like food and fitness and stuff?
Well, first of all, like MS is a very individual um disease, right? So it won't affect me as the same way as it might affect you if you ever got it or had it. Um, and if people don't know, like MS is a chronic autoimmune disease. So what it does, it affects the central nervous system. So which includes like the brain and the spinal cord. And it also, so when your body is sick, like mine is, it allows, no, it like mistakenly attacks my myelin sheaths, which is the protective covering around the nerve fibers, right? So when I lose contact with that, that's when the body doesn't work in certain ways. Um, but so that was just like a little bit what it is because not everybody knows. And usually
Yeah, that's a good point.
people think that MS is a muscular disease, but it's not. It's a neurological disease. So that's a big difference. But people think it's a muscular disease because you might end up in a wheelchair.
Yeah, that's what I used to think. Like I thought it was kind of like your muscles like degenerating like over time, kind of.
Yeah, but that's
Um,
not the case. The thing is that you lose contact with your muscles because of the nervous system, right? Because your nerves doesn't work. So if my brain tells my leg to move, but the nervous system doesn't work, right? The signal is not going to go through. It's going to be like, no, this is not happening, right? Um, so I totally forgot the question.
no worries. In terms of like maybe misconceptions, I mean, you just named a big one, right? A lot of people, including myself in the past, like think that it's like a muscular thing, but it's actually the nervous system. But I want to kind of tie this in with like nutrition, fitness, and that side of life, which of course is very big for you as well. Like, what are some misconceptions around that you feel like?
I think personally, this is my personal opinion. I have to just make that clear. I think a lot of people with chronic diseases, no matter what it is, they give up too soon, right? They get a diagnosis and they're like, "Oh, okay, that explains everything, and I'll just give up because that's what I have now." Um, I don't personally like that mindset because for me, MS is something I have, it's not who I am, right? So my MS is not going to define me. It's something I have and something that I have to like be aware of in my everyday life in the years to come and for the rest of my life, probably until I die, right? But I think a lot of people give up way too soon. And again, just want to make this clear that everybody has their different individual journey. So some people will have a lot worse type of muscle of multiple sclerosis. So there's different types, right? So there's one like more aggressive. There's the other one that's relapse remitting. That's what I have. So I get like attacks and then I get better and all this. And then you have like, there's different stages. Um, so not everything is like easy and just be like, oh, get off the couch and do this and do that. And that I totally understand. But if you start with the mindset, you can do so much. And from that, I would like recommend people to just like read so much and find something that works for you. You do not have to go all vegan. I did for 4 years just to try it out. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to go all vegan. You don't have to do that or that diet. Just find something that works for you and see how your body responds to it. Also, you don't have to do weightlifting. Find something else, but keep your body moving. That's like what I would recommend people to do. But to go back to the question, I think that again, that people give up too soon, and people that doesn't know about the disease will think that you will end up in a wheelchair, but it's not like that. That's many, many years ago, and the science behind like the research now is so much better, and the medication is much, much better.
I love that. I think, yeah, absolutely. When it comes to these conditions, right, and it could be MS, it could be something else, like that condition or disease, like if we're using a road trip analogy, if you're in the car, like that disease isn't driving, like you are still the one actually controlling the car, and you're in charge of where you're going to. You make decisions, right? That condition is just there in the passenger seat. Like it's going to be there. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit naggy, right? It
Yeah,
kind of bother
yeah,
you and complain or
yeah.
whatever it is. But like you're still in charge, like you're still behind the wheel. And I think we always got to remember that. And I have a
Yeah.
lot of conversations with our clients too around this. It's like we all go through tough times. It could be straight up depression. It could just be a bad week. It could be right. It
Exactly.
could be anything, right? But even then, even when we're at our lowest point, which is very hard, right? It's super hard. One of the most difficult things there can be. But like even at our lowest point, there is something we can do to figure it out. And maybe not all by ourselves, but like there's something that can at least improve the situation, right?
Yeah. But
Um,
like if you think about it, like really, if you want to put a like good perspective on things, I mean, yes, I have a disease and I am sick, right? But I have really good days. I'm blessed in that way, and I feel like I'm really lucky with like how my disease is like developing, but you never know, right? Things shift so fast. But the thing is that if you, for example, if you're very sad and you listen to a sad song, you get even sadder,
yep.
right? But if you're happy and you listen to a happy song, that emotion gets even stronger, right? So it's like if you if you're sick and you just think about this all day long, you're sick and this is unfair, this is this and this is that. Well, that's where your mindset at. That's it. So instead of that, be like, okay, how can I use this? How can I use this as my superpower? Like, what can I do differently that nobody else is doing? Um, like when I walk around, people don't look at me like I'm sick. Nobody knows except they if they know me. And that's kind of cool because I was like, hey, you didn't know I was at the hospital 2 years ago, do you? Right? So it's like, I don't know, I just wish people could understand that no matter where you're in life, no matter if you have a disease or not, your mindset is everything, like everything.
100%. I mean, I love this because it puts you back in charge.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, absolutely. Like, I mean, I'm mostly a nutrition coach, but like the biggest breakthroughs, it's all mindset.
Yeah.
And the biggest things that we can address in check-ins and all that stuff, like it's the mindset, right? And I do think it's hard in general, right, to change that, especially if you're in a dark period, let's say. But absolutely, like we can work on our mindset. There's still
Hmm.
things we can do. And again, that's not easy, but we can still make a point of doing that. And it could be something tiny, like start journaling for 5 minutes a day, maybe 10.
Yeah.
Look into breath work. There's one, it's called the physiological sigh. I'm not sure if you heard about that one.
No.
It's basically like a breathing exercise, and it almost immediately calms down the nervous system in the moment, which is really cool. Like there's so many things to explore, right? And it doesn't have to be journaling or breath work, but like there's so many things that we can actually still do and objectively do, whether we feel great or we don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single day, that maybe in the beginning might not have any results, but once we do them consistently, can actually improve things quite a lot, right? So let me ask you this, especially mindset-wise first, because I can tell that you're really good with that in general. Yeah, like it's because even just having that awareness around it, right? And knowing like, hey, like I'm going to use this as my superpower and deciding that, I think that's a big one. Do you think you already kind of had that, or was it something you had to work towards this process?
I'm pretty stubborn, so I think I had that already, but when you're 26, you don't really think that you're going to wake up one day and be sick for the rest of your life. So it was absolutely an adjustment, but I've always had a strong mindset. So I think I'm not in like this um mentality that it's unfair. Of course, I felt like it's unfair. I've done that. Like there's hard times for me too. I had different medications that like really set me off guard and made me really, really sick. Not the disease, but the medication, right? With the hallucinating and throwing up and diarrhea, like losing my hair, you name it, everything on the package, I had it. In that moment, I was like, this is unfair. I did not ask for this. Uh, but instead of, just giving up on life, I shared it. I shared everything. And I showed my skin because I had this acne, like really heavy acne because of one other medication. And I showed it. I was like, look at my skin. This is just the medication. This is not the disease, but the medication is making me sicker than I am. So I think I'm blessed with having the mindset, but I still had to deal with hard times and figure out how to deal with them and not letting it get the hand of me.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it also sucks like when you're on medication, but then you feel way worse, right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, so like I'm assuming you're still on medication currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like
Yeah.
I'm assuming then you also changed that. Like how did it go? Like were you like, hey, oh, we gotta try something else, or?
Yeah, I started with one medication and that one got me really sick. I'm not going to say which type it is because I want, again, people react
Yeah.
differently. Um, so I started with one and I got really sick from that. So after a half a year, I had to stop and I had to do like a cleansing out cure or whatever. And that was horrible. And then I had a break, and then I started a new medication, and that medication didn't really help because I ended up with a new relapse. So I had a catheter when I was 31. I ended up at hospital, and that was the toughest so far in my MS history. And after that, I started a new medication, and so far, so good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because what's the medication supposed to do? Kind of like, is it reducing symptoms? Like, does it do anything for like your nervous system, or?
It slows down the develop of the disease. So it's a very heavy medication, but it's slowing down like the process of the developing of the medication the disease. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it is. But you also get like if you have really bad symptoms, you can get medication on the spot just to get the medications and the symptoms down.
Yeah, that makes sense. So other than like the medication, what do you currently do? Like, do you feel like you have it under control, like pretty well at this time?
Yeah, as much as I can, yes.
Yeah. And is there something specific you do for that?
I keep myself active. I move my body. Either is uh, taking walks, yoga. I do a lot of strength exercises because I personally believe that shocking the nervous system by lifting heavy weights is a good thing. And there's a lot of researches in that as well. But if you're interested in that, you can look it up. But also eating enough food, right? And just not like, but I'm not like super strict. It's not like I'm eating avocado and blueberries every day, 24/7. It's not that. It's I eat whatever I want to, but I don't overdo it. And I still have chocolate and chips and whatever you want when I feel like it. So it's kind of just figuring out what works for you. And if it's something that triggers, stop eating it.
Easier said than done in some cases, but that's what it comes down to. Absolutely, 100%.
It is what it comes
Yeah,
down to.
yeah. But it's cool because you're actually just doing what most people should be doing on their fitness journey or their health journey in general, like also without MS, right?
Yeah.
Which already by itself, without MS, is plenty to kind of work on, you know? So like, does it affect like any like results in terms of maybe like muscle or like not necessarily?
No, I have not seen that. But
Cool.
again, individual, right? Because, but still, my my nerves going through down to my legs are the where I'm damaged, right? And my legs is the biggest muscles that I have. So,
Again, you don't have to be doomed, you know, with the
no.
condition. No, that's cool. That's actually great. So obviously, right, you still can't look at that. Sounds like you have it under control, like pretty well, for as much as, you
Mhm.
know, that's possible, which is great. What are some things like, because obviously you share a lot about this online. What are some things that like resonate with people the most when they're like, hey, you know, thank you for sharing that? Like,
They feel like there's been these girls, mostly girls because women gets it more. They contacted me and said like, thank you for sharing this because I haven't found anybody in my like friends group or anybody that lives close to me that has this or understand this. So they thank me for talking about this out loud. But for me, it's like no brainer because I'm like, well, not anybody, not too many knows about this. And if I can be a spokesperson or a spokesperson, I'd love to be that. And I want to show you that it's possible to still live a life and have this disease. So I've had that, and I've also had um, people who is family with someone who has MS, and they've been asking me like, how can I approach this person without being negative or like trying to pull them out or stuff like that. So my best advice to anybody who's struggling with chronic disease is instead of asking, how are you doing? Because that's a really heavy question. When somebody's sick and somebody's like struggling, just ask them, how's your day? Do you have a good day or do you have a bad day? That's it.
yeah, I think even those little things, like we don't even think about that, you know, necessarily, like,
Yeah.
but it can make a big difference. Um, so for yourself, and maybe like this may even show up in your coaching, like what were some of like your biggest lessons like throughout this whole journey?
Mindset.
Mindset.
And also don't take a healthy day for granted, but your mindset will always save you. So if you focus on your mindset, you'll get far. Either way, whatever your journey is.
And I think stubbornness helps too.
It does.
You know, no, but it does though. Like in a way, you just got to be stubborn about reaching your goals. You know, you got to
Yeah.
be stubborn about like, hey, like no, I'm gonna make this work. You know,
Yeah, it's all about how much do you want it. Because I could have when I'm turning 34 this year, but when I was 26, I could have just been like, nope, not doing this, and I'm gonna just stay on the couch. I wouldn't have been in the shape I am today. I would probably have more fat on my body and probably be more miserable, right?
yeah. Which like I will say like that's of course easier said than done because not everyone already has that stubborn and strong mindset, you know?
Mhm.
So it's very easy to fall into that. But also for those people, like, again, going back to what I was saying, like, there is something you can do. And I think especially if we are stuck and we cannot figure things out, like we gotta, again, be stubborn about figuring it out and just asking for help and looking for help. Even when it comes to, you know, different medications, like you've tried multiple different medications and now there's one that's working for you. It sounds like you have a great doctor who told you, like, hey, keep doing what you're doing, keep lifting weights. That's massive. Some people, unfortunately, many of my clients have gone to the doctor where they don't feel like they're being taken serious, or they're told, well, you're just supposed to lose 20 kilos,
Yeah.
or, right, you just need to cut out sugar, whatever it may be. I'm trying to say is, like, even if we don't feel like we're getting the help we deserve and need, we can still continue to look, and then eventually, like, we will find someone, you know, who
Yeah,
can
and
help.
I think you have to well, first of all, people needs to be kinder to themselves. But I think too, in order to make the mindset shift, you have to start with small habits and keep them small. Like, for example, if you're feeling really low and you're like, I think I might start feeling depressed. Okay, start with making your bed every day. If you can do that for a week, good job. Okay, let's add something new to the list. Let's celebrate the small wins, right? Instead of focusing on, I should have done 10 things today, but I only did one. Okay, good job. You did one, right? It's small steps.
Yeah, because that's a great thing to wrap it up with as well, because, and this could be for people on their fat loss journey or just health or whatever in general, like these massive goals that we may have or these big problems we have to take care of, like the solution to those things is not this big massive thing. It's like, no, it's like a tiny little step here and then the next step and then you do something else, and like over time, I mean, that's that whole consistency conversation, right? It's like you're not completely flipping your life over like on day one. Like you got to work
No.
towards that. That's that also classic all or nothing thing that people, again, this January have experienced, right?
Hmm.
It's like, okay, now I'm motivated, day one, boom, I'm going to do my whole life differently. Like that's the
Mm.
stuff that doesn't last, right?
Mm.
And hey, some people, they can stick with it and, right, good for them. But for most people, that's not the case. Um, and for all of us, in my opinion, we're like, we got to have a step-by-step approach to eventually get to that big goal. Because again, it's not one massive day of flipping everything over upside down. Whether it's,
No,
again, weight loss, like we don't lose the 20 kilos in one day. You know what I mean?
no, no, no.
You lose
Takes
100
time.
grams and then the next 100 grams.
Yeah.
Um, and that goes for anything. It's small steps, you know? So that being said, so obviously recently you start coaching, and which is super exciting. I'm very excited for you. What are some of the things you're currently working on, and where can people find you, etc.?
Well, right now I'm building my business as an online coach, and I have some clients up and running, so that's exciting. And I'm on Instagram and also TikTok, and you can find me everywhere, kind of, really.
LinkedIn too,
Uh,
right?
and LinkedIn too, yes.
That's cool.
So I have the handle Ronja Ronjes, but you can also find me at coachronja.com.
I'll make sure to share that in the show notes for people to find it. Is there anything else you want to share? Any final words or tips?
Final words. If you have an autoimmune disease, remember that you're not the disease. You have the disease, but it's not who you are. And also, mindset is everything. So take care of that first.
Awesome. Great to have you on. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.